For some reason, I can't see if people are joining, but I will kick off anyway. So welcome and thank you to everybody who is joining us today for this briefing webinar. This is specific to the OWGP Innovation Grants competition that was launched last week. And shall I give a minute or two for more people? Or, yeah.
About 35 at the moment, Claire.
You keep me right, Lynn, sorry, because I don't know why I can't see participants. So yeah, we'll give another 30 seconds and then I'll just kick off. Okay. So again, thank you, welcome to everybody who's joining the webinar. This is to give an overview of the OWGP Innovation Grants competition that we launched last week. Just to introduce myself, my name is Claire Canning. I'm one of the programme managers for the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership. And with me today, I've got Lynn McIntosh-Grieve, who is the other programme manager, and also Andy McDonald, the programme director, who is losing his voice and so is on voice rest for the remainder of the webinar. So we've got quite a lot to get through today. So I will kick things off. So this is today's agenda, just to introduce the programme, and then we'll go into the competition in a little bit more detail. And I will cover that area, and then we'll move on to some of the other support opportunities that we've got at the moment, and some upcoming opportunities as well that my colleague Lynn McIntosh-Grieve will go through. Then we'll finish up with a Q&A, depending on how much time that we've got, and we'll close out the session. So for those that are, I think most people on the call will probably be familiar with OWGP, but for anybody that's not familiar, this is a programme that was established as part of the offshore wind sector deal 2 years ago now. It's a long-term business transformation programme for UK offshore wind supply chain, so really to support growth and increase UK content. The programme itself is funded by members of the Offshore Wind Industry Council. So that includes all the offshore wind developers and turbine manufacturers who have committed to a budget of £100 million over 10 years. So the programme is set up really to deliver these 4 key aims. As I mentioned, one, to increase UK content in UK projects, so really helping UK supply chain companies to grow and become more competitive. Increase exports to global markets, and increasing jobs and GVA, and also increasing UK IP embedded within the supply chain. So in terms of the delivery of the programme, it is managed and delivered by ORE Catapult. So myself, Lynn and Andy are all ORE Catapult employees, but we work 100% of our time dedicated to the delivery of OWGP. And the way that we deliver support is through 2 key mechanisms. One is business transformation, and this is essentially delivering structured programs really to help companies to grow and provide tailored support based on their specific needs. And also grant funding, which is really awarding grants to companies on a competitive basis to deliver new products and services and helping to increase capability and capacity. On the grant funding side, so this is the particular programme that I manage. We are really looking to identify high growth companies and award grants on a competitive basis. And we have 2 kind of grant funding programs within our portfolio. The first is development grants that some of you might be familiar with, and really these are large scale grants between £100,000 and £1 million for transformative projects that's really going to enable companies to grow. So it's all about enhancing capability, capacity, and creating significant growth for UK businesses. To complement that, we've just started running now a smaller scale grant programme called Innovation Grants, that's going to enable game-changing projects and deliver new products and services to the sector. and these are grants of between £25,000 and £100,000. So on the right there, I've got some companies that we're already actively working with and delivering projects. We've got 22 projects in our portfolio just now, and before the year is up, we'll be adding probably a lot more to that. We're assessing the last round of grant funding applications just now. So that's going to grow quite considerably in the coming months. So to complement grant funding, I mentioned that we do business transformation, and this is delivered by my colleague Lynn. Business transformation, as I say, is a set of structured programs to support companies at different stages within their journey in offshore wind, really helping to increase impact, productivity, growth, and help to improve competitiveness. Within our portfolio, we have two key programs that we're delivering. One is Wind Expert Support Toolkit, or WEST. This provides foundation level support for companies looking for specialist advice, market intelligence, business planning. So it's a really good support program for companies that are possibly looking to transition into the sector, who are new to offshore wind, even for companies that are active in the sector but have some specific needs to help them grow. Sharing and Growth is a program even that we've adapted from aerospace. It's what we would consider an advanced level program that's quite intense, really for ambitious companies that are already active in the sector, looking to drive operational efficiencies and improvements in leadership and culture. So it's all about embedding people within an organisation and helping them to develop and improve their competitiveness. So we're working with various companies there. The West Pilot Programme has already supported 32 companies, and I think we're looking to double this almost by the end of the year. Sharing and Growth Pilot now has 5 companies working through the programme, and we have 3 further applicants undergoing due diligence, and you can see the different types of companies that we're working with. And Lynn will talk about these programmes in more detail towards the end of the webinar. So moving on to the innovation grants. So the purpose of the competition is really for projects that's going to lead to market-ready solutions to accelerate offshore wind consenting and site development activities. So really focusing within that kind of phase of the life cycle for offshore wind. We've got sort of 2 key aims for this competition. The first of all is really to enable the commercialisation of products, services and technologies is going to support developers within this phase. So looking at the sort of project level or site specific development activities. This can include ongoing monitoring, mitigation and compensation measures as well. And also because it's OWGP, we're obviously looking to support the growth of businesses. So we're looking for projects that are going to lead to job creation, export opportunities, develop new IP. The total funding pot for this particular competition is £3 million, and we are able to award grants anywhere between £25,000 and £100,000 for specific projects. And we've got project duration timeline of between 6 months and 18 months. So in terms of why we've chosen this particular topic to focus our competition, I just wanted to give a bit of context as to where we're at in terms of the current leasing round and the size and scale of the opportunity for site development and consenting activities. So most of you will know we're currently within leasing round 4, of which there are 5 stages of the leasing process. And at the moment, the Crown Estate is undergoing plan level habitat regulation assessments to assess the potential impact of the 6 projects identified through the tendering process. And on the screen, I know it's very, very small, but you can see on the right-hand side the 6 different projects there and the different sites identified through this bidding round. So this process is expected to take anywhere between 9 and 12 months and must be completed before the seabed rights can be awarded. So we're expecting from spring next year onwards, developers will then be undertaking their own project-specific or site-specific environmental assessments as part of their application for development consent. And this entire process is estimated to take around 5 years, as you can see on the image at the bottom there. And I should say I've taken both of these from the Crown Estate website, and I've got a link to these resources within the slide pack. The entire process is estimated to take around 5 years, and it can account for approximately 3.5% the total life cycle costs for an offshore wind farm, or as much as £120,000 per megawatt. So if you're thinking about the context of a 1 gigawatt project, for example, it could cost £120 million for development and consenting alone. So it really gives a sense of how large the market opportunity is for different technologies and tools and techniques that can accelerate this process, improve efficiency, and really try and lower the cost wherever possible. Of course, in this instance, I'm talking about England and Wales. In Scotland, there's a separate leasing round that's currently ongoing for offshore wind development in Scottish waters, and this is known as Scotland, and led by the Crown Estate Scotland. So although the leasing process and the terminologies, policies, and the sort of regulatory bodies involved might be slightly different for Scotland, I would say that the general site development and consenting challenges and the activities involved are more or less the same. Potentially some added barriers with deeper waters and floating wind expected to be a large part of the portfolio. In terms of the application period for option agreements on seabed leases has now closed, and bids from interested developers are now being evaluated. So I know it's not particularly clear, but again, I've got the links to these images within the slide pack. So as far as I know, there were over 70 bids, I think, across the 15 sites. Option agreements will then be offered to successful bidders, and then it's on to the independent site investigations, which I'm anticipating to begin early next year. So in addition to existing opportunities in survey work and ongoing monitoring that might be around at the moment, we're thinking next year there's going to be a significant pipeline of opportunity, and that's just in the UK alone. I haven't even mentioned like global markets that are growing rapidly across Europe, the US, and the Far East, which all represent really significant export opportunities for UK businesses with marketable solutions. So moving on to the scope. In terms of scope, I would say it's reasonably broad. Covers most areas associated with offshore wind site development, surveying, and ongoing monitoring. Environmental surveys and impact assessments are really critical to this process. So any new techniques and technologies that can support this activity would certainly be in scope. It covers all areas of environmental surveys. So apologies if I've missed any areas there, but I've highlighted ornithological because understanding the impacts on birds is known as a key priority for the sector. So I've highlighted that one. As is monitoring, mitigation, and compensation tools and techniques. So this can include monitoring during pre-construction, construction, right through to operation and decommissioning, to identify impacts of the project and compare to what was predicted within the EIA, and really help to inform decision-making and improvements. Also includes best practice mitigation measures to see where we can actually avoid adverse impacts on biodiversity, again, during construction and operation. So thinking about different mitigation techniques, one example that comes to mind is looking at bubble curtains during the installation of foundations to mitigate noise impact on marine mammals. And also looking at compensation techniques where adverse effects on a site may not be able to be ruled out. So what compensatory mechanisms or tools or approaches can be used to minimise that. Also looking at focusing on nature inclusive or environmentally friendly designs. Anything that can really be done to enhance biodiversity, using environmentally friendly approaches or materials or solutions would certainly be in scope there. And of course, within scope is looking at subsea survey technologies and techniques. This could include novel sensors, sonars, robotic solutions or autonomous solutions, anything that can help improve efficiency and reliability of data collection and reduce costs. Data sharing platforms as well. This is an interesting one, potentially could enable collaboration and perhaps a better understanding of characteristics and cumulative impacts across multiple sites. And looking at different technologies to optimize scoping and site selection. And the reason I've got this list is because these are areas that have been identified as kind of challenge areas or innovation priorities for the sector through discussions with different industry representatives. And I've got here, this is a link that will take you through to the Innovation Grant Scope and Guidance document. So there's more information there. And if you're unsure, if you've got a particular project plan, if you're unsure if it fits within the criteria or within the scope, then do just get in contact and we can have a discussion about it. I should say as well, again, I can't see how many participants and I can't see if any questions are coming through, but please do use the Q&A function at the bottom and do keep the questions coming in and we'll certainly get to those at the end. In terms of eligibility, all of this information again is in the scope and guidance, but I'm happy to pick out a few kind of key areas. We're looking to support UK businesses. You can be a UK registered company of any size. Applicants to this call must not be in receipt of current grant funding from a competition that was launched in the last 12 months. So essentially that is the development grants competition from last year. So if you are in receipt of funding or development grant, then you would not be eligible to bid in for this particular call. In terms of resubmissions, applicants that are resubmitting a proposal from a previous funding competition may only resubmit once. So only one resubmission for a particular project. For projects that are technology focused, so any new technology product that's being developed, it must be near to market because we're looking for projects that will lead to commercialisation. So if it's early stage research, if it's conceptual level, early prototype development, it's probably not going to be in scope for this particular call. But if you're unsure about this, then you can contact me and I'm happy to discuss in more detail. We're obviously looking for projects that demonstrate a clear business need or a market opportunity for their particular product that has to align with the scope. Again, this is important. OWGP will provide a grant of 50% of the total project cost. So we'll be looking for companies to provide a match contribution of 50%. So in the example there, so if the total project costs are £200,000, that could be made up of £100,000 innovation grant, which is the maximum that we could provide, £50,000 in cash investment from the company, £50,000 in-kind contribution. An in-kind contribution could be time spent on the project, it could be materials, facilities, equipment, things like that. Also, we'll be assessing on the additionality and value for money. So it's very important to explain why would this project not take place without OWGP intervention. In terms of the project team, in addition to the lead applicant, we really encourage the inclusion of other organisations as part of the wider project team where this is appropriate, where it might be able to support the development of product service. For example, bringing in other UK-based businesses, academic institutions, and research technology organisations. We really encourage that. In this particular call, I certainly would encourage bringing in other key stakeholders or regulatory bodies that can help with, looking at consenting or site development challenges, even as an advisory capacity. And I've put some examples there. So Natural England, Marine Scotland, JNCC, I think all quite useful companies or organisations. If you are thinking about bringing in project partners and might need some support, we might be able to help, so do get in touch with the team, and we can also direct you to the appropriate representative within your regional cluster who might be able to identify local organisations or companies to support. We may be able to consider overseas delivery partner if there's a specific capability that does not currently exist in the UK, I would advise to do let us know before submitting an application, and make sure this is clearly justified within the application as well. In terms of, if it is a collaborative project, in terms of contracting for successful projects, OWGP will contract directly with the lead organisation or the lead applicant. So it would be up to that applicant to have subcontracting arrangements with the other project partners. So we would contract with and allocate grant funding to the lead applicant. Okay, so how to apply? So we've started to do things a little bit differently than we've done in previous years. The application forms that we're using are now accessible through Microsoft Forms. And you can get all the application material, the documents, and have access to the form by accessing the OWGP website. The link is at the top there. And I should say, if anybody has been on the website in the last day or so and has difficulties with accessibility, we are aware that there is a slight problem there, and it is in the process of being resolved if it hasn't already. So we definitely recommend that you download the scope and guidance document before you attempt to start filling in the form. All the application questions are listed out in the scope and guidance, so you can actually see that before you go into your form. The questions are a blend of text answers. The majority of them are maximum 600 words. There's also some numerical and drop-down responses as well. Please note that once you go in and start filling out your form, you will not be able to save it and return to it. So we recommend, again, that you draft responses to the questions that are found in the guidance document before copying these into your form for submission. And you'll be able to save a PDF copy of your responses after the submission as well. And this just kind of shows what the front page looks like of the form. For supporting material, we definitely encourage that you submit an appendix or anything to support your application. This could be anything like business plan, project plan, letters of support. It must be a PDF, and it can be up to 5 pages long. Unfortunately, we don't have the function enabled yet that you can add this or upload it along with your form. So we ask that you would send this separately to us. So if you intend to submit an appendix, you can select yes in response to the final question in the application form. And then you can email that to the info@ mailbox before the competition deadline. So you'll receive an automatic notification that your application form has been received. And then if there's any supplementary material coming to the mailbox, you'll be notified by email as well once that's been received. Again, all of this information and the steps are clearly detailed in the guidance document, and it's less complicated than it sounds. In terms of the assessment, the competition, unlike the development grants competition, this is just a single stage application process. So all of the information that you put in that Microsoft form is the information that is going to be assessed. So we'll review all of the applications internally just to make sure that they meet the eligibility criteria, and then these will be passed on to external assessors for independent assessment. So we're looking to expand our pool of external assessors. So we'll be launching a call in the next couple of weeks to build on that experience and expertise that we have. Assessment will only be based on the information submitted by applicants, and you will be notified of the award decision via email on or before the 17th of December. And you'll also receive feedback on your application shortly afterwards. This is the evaluation criteria that the external assessors will be using to assess all applications, split into 6 sections or 6 criteria that broadly align with the sections within the application form. For those of you that have submitted applications to the to any other previous grant funding, OWGP grant funding competition, will be very familiar with this. It's sort of a blend of what we've done before. Essentially, we're wanting to make sure that the company or applicant is relevant, can demonstrate relevant experience, and is well suited to delivery in offshore wind, particularly within the site development activities, making sure there's a clear understanding of the challenge they're trying to solve, and there's a clear market need there, business opportunity, making sure that the solution that's proposed is appropriate in addressing the particular challenge, making sure that the project description is clear. So what's the project going to do? How is it going to be delivered well? What project management processes are going to be in place? And how will you maximize the outputs of that project in terms of growing your business and being successful within the market? And we'll always be assessing, looking at additionality of OWGP funding, what is the added value that OWGP funding brings? Would the project take place without OWGP funding? Is it good value for money? And very importantly, the last assessment criteria is alignment with our KPIs. So is this really going to unlock growth for your business? Again, we're looking at jobs, turnover, IP exports, and any kind of additional impacts and benefits that the project brings. So that's the assessment criteria. These are the timescales. So the deadline for applications is the 29th of October. And as I mentioned before, you'll be notified of the decision on or before the 17th of December, so before everyone finishes up for Christmas. And we're anticipating projects to start on or before the 1st of April next year. I would say, just to reiterate, if you're not sure about your project plan, if it fits within the scope or the criteria, or if there's any questions at all, do just contact me directly before submitting an application. I know that many of you have already set up one-to-ones with myself in the next couple of weeks, which is great. So I really encourage that. If you do have any specific questions or want to set up a meeting, I advise people do it before the 15th of October, because I am on leave for a couple of weeks and then the competition closes. Although I'm sure my colleagues can happily help. Just basic submission details here. So do make sure that you've registered on the website. And as I say, we do recommend that you draft your responses to the application questions that can be found in the scope and guidance document. So do download that first and foremost. Paste your responses into the application form, the link is there. And if you do have any supporting material that you would like to submit along with your application, then absolutely please do that and email that to us before the deadline. And you'll be notified by email to confirm that we've received your application. And just finally, so I referred to a few different resources today throughout the presentation. I've put links to these, so I found them really helpful, up to date. And in particular, I wanted to highlight the Offshore Wind Innovation Hub roadmaps, because I didn't cover them within the presentation, but they're quite useful in identifying certain innovation priorities that have been identified by the sector. And so you can find by clicking this link. And next week, there will be a study published by the Offshore Wind Innovation Hub and Exodus, who've done a study looking at data digital solutions for offshore wind consenting and site development challenges. So I think that might be quite a useful resource, and I will update the slide pack with that link once it goes live and circulate that to everybody. So that is it for the innovation grants overview. I'm going to pass to my colleague Lynn, who's going to talk about some of the business transformation programs that are live at the moment and some upcoming opportunities as well. So thanks, Lynn.
Thanks very much, Claire, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back and to be presenting a little bit on OWGP and to see so many attendees today. Just want to highlight before I push on with the next couple of slides is that if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A and we will come to them as soon as we can, and we'll also answer some of those live afterwards too. So yeah, I wanted to touch on a number of current live opportunities that you can also engage with the OWGP have available, and the first is the WEST programme, so Wind Expert Support Toolkit. And as Claire mentioned at the top of her presentation, WEST programme is the foundation element of our business transformation programmes. It provides market intelligence, insight and understanding to companies as to where they could potentially fit into the offshore wind sector. It is for companies of all different shapes and sizes, and I'll show you a little bit about what we mean by that shortly. But really, it's all about providing companies with needs-focused support. So we aim through the WEST programme to provide bespoke support to each organisation that we engage with. It starts off with an assessment of a company's needs based on an application that they would make to OWGP. We would then link the company up with one of our expert delivery partners to help provide support and provide guidance and understanding of the sector to meet the needs identified. And then thereafter, each organisation that is successful in application would also receive an information pack which is bespoke and tailored to their organisation in order that they can move forward in the sector or make recommendations for their next steps. Next slide, please, Claire. Thank you. So as I say, the programme itself provides, sorry, we've just lost the slide, thank you, provides companies with an understanding of the sector, but it's also about encouraging companies to engage who perhaps are working outside the sector currently. So we work with companies both in and out with the sector and trying to look how we can kind of cross-fertilise from other sectors and areas where there is strength in the UK currently. The WEST programme is also very, very crucial for OWGP as an organisation, as it helps inform us of the needs of companies across the supply chain, and then it allows us to better shape and inform our future activities in support of the supply chain. So really a very valuable programme for us. And as Claire mentioned previously, we've already worked with over 32 companies through our WEST pilot programme. We're working with companies specifically in the northeast of England as well through our TIGOR programme, which is also a WEST programme, a WEST Light programme. So if you're based in the northeast of England, you can also access WEST through a programme part funded by the North Tyne Combined Authority and the North East LEP. The WEST National programme, which is shown here at the moment, we're hoping to support 60 to 70 companies. That was from July of 2021 right up until April 2022. So still opportunities to engage with us on the WEST programme, still opportunities to apply. Next slide, please, Claire. So if you're wondering whether this is for you or whether it would be applicable to your organisation, even if you were to apply for the innovation grants, you can still apply to WEST. So that's a good thing. And actually it can also bolster activities in the grant funding space. We are working and looking to work with companies right across the spectrum of the UK supply chain, from startup companies right the way through to companies who are already established in the sector, but perhaps who need some specific strategic insight or intelligence in order that they can accelerate their presence in the marketplace. So if you have any doubts, if you have any questions about the programme, please do reach out to me. I'd be delighted to have a conversation with you about the programme and to perhaps engage with you on the programme as well. The second opportunity that we have live in the Business Transformation Programme suite is the Sharing and Growth Programme. And as Claire mentioned, we're working collaboratively with Sharing and Growth UK Limited, who have been running the Sharing and Growth Programme since 2012, very successfully in the aerospace sector. Specifically for this programme within offshore wind, we are looking to engage with companies who are already active in the offshore wind sector. So seeking ambitious companies who can commit themselves to accelerate growth and who have leadership engagement in the development and change, positive change within their business. We are looking for companies with a site turnover of between £5 and £100 million. So if that is you and your organisation, then please do reach out to us. We'd be delighted to have a conversation. And additionally, we're looking for companies that have site headcounts of over 45 staff. That allows us to understand that the companies might have the ability to be able to absorb the support, because the support is rather advanced, as Claire mentioned earlier on. It does require a lot of engagement from companies who are the beneficiaries of the support, and therefore, in order to absorb that support, there is a requirement that the company is big enough to do that. So you can find further details on both the WEST programme and the Sharing and Growth programme underneath the Opportunities tab on our website under Business Transformation Programmes. And as Claire mentioned earlier, you will be able to download the slides from today, which contain further information, including a detailed flyer and the application form itself. So in more or less closing then, just a bit of a look where we are now, and a look ahead as well for OWGP programmes. So as you can see there, the development grants call was launched sort of Q2 2021, and that's now closed. The innovation grants is what we're talking about today specifically, and that opportunity is open. And as Claire mentioned earlier on, we'd be delighted to hear from you if you have an idea that fits within the scope of the programme that you would like to discuss further with us. We will be launching a further development grants funding call in November, so stay tuned for that. And as I mentioned already, both the WEST programme and the Sharing and Growth programme are open for applications, as well as the TIGOR North East Business Growth Programme, which covers the North East of England and the North of Tyne Combined Authority areas, and that provides companies with West Light support. Lots of links there for you to engage with our content, so please do, and as I say, reach out if you have further questions. Okay, we're going to move now to the Q&A. However, I know that Claire has been readily anticipating a number of questions and therefore has prepared a number of FAQs. So Claire, I don't know if you want to cover those off, and then we can go to the questions themselves.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lynn. So I've had a few questions prior to this webinar, and I thought it'd be worth just flagging them on the screen. So if your company, I've sort of covered some of these already, but if the company is currently receiving grant funding from a previous competition, am I eligible to apply for an innovation grant? If you're in receipt of a development grant from last year, no, you would not be eligible. If you've received funding from the pilot call, open call, cross-sector call, yes, you would be eligible. Will submitting an application to innovation grants call preclude me from applying to the next development grants competition? No. So we'll make sure that all applicants are notified of the award decision for innovation grants before the stage 1 application window closes for the next development grant call. So you'll know if you've been successful or not before you need to consider the next competition. What I would say for companies that are sort of unsure which call to bid into, if you have a solution or a project that really fits the scope of this particular competition, I would encourage you to bid in, because we find our experience has been that development grant competitions, because they tend to be quite open scope and they're very large grants, they're very competitive. So if you have something targeted that meets the scope of this call, I would encourage you to apply. And remember that development grants will be launched every 6 months. So if it makes sense to wait a bit longer and carve out a more suitable project, then I'd recommend to do that. If you're participating in WEST or Sharing and Growth, can you bid in for funding? Yes, and vice versa. They're two different support strands, and you're welcome to apply for both. What is the amount of funding available to universities and RTOs? So unlike Innovate UK, we don't have a set allowance for RTOs or academic institutions. I kind of mentioned this before, but we allocate funding to the lead organisation, who is then able to subcontract elements of the scope to different project partners. So it doesn't matter if it's another company, if it's an academic institution or an RTO, there's no particular allowance to a different project partner. The total project costs, including subcontracting arrangements, should be detailed within your application under the finance breakdown. In terms of matched contribution and in-kind contribution, what does this mean? So by in-kind contribution, typically we would mean time spent on the project. So if it's not a collaborative project, so it might be labour costs, it might be materials, equipment, facilities that you're bringing to the project. Yeah, so if there's any specific questions on that, do let me know. And actually on the Q&A, I saw a question that relates to being precluded to applying. So are companies who have bids under consideration for the current grant funding eligible to bid for this funding? So that's a good question. I meant to add that to the FAQ. I would say yes. So we are on track to know, so any companies that have submitted a stage 2 business plan for the May development grants competition that are currently being assessed just now, we're on track to make the award decision within the next few weeks. So you'll be notified of that decision before this call closes. So you are eligible. If you're successful, then no, you can't bid in. But if you're unsuccessful, you'll be notified in time that you can submit an application to this particular call. So in terms of FAQs, that's all I've covered. I'm happy to kind of go into the Q&A on the chat.
I can do that, Claire, if you like, and I can kind of host that. So we've already answered a couple of the questions, and I hope that that is visible to everyone in the Q&A set. But just to recap, so quite a few questions on the alignment of the actual call itself. So this call is specifically an innovation grant focusing on market-ready solutions to accelerate offshore wind consenting and site development activities. So if you are looking at something in O&M, or you're looking at something that doesn't fit that scope, then unfortunately that wouldn't be applicable to this particular call. We do have regular calls, and we would look to have other calls for innovation going forward, but we wouldn't have a definitive timeline or a set of which particular areas we would cover in each, as it is somewhat governed by our board and also by our funders and stakeholders. So that is something that you'll need to stay alive to, I think. Okay, just a couple of questions here, Claire, then. So can funding include activities associated with marketing and sales activities?
So I would say yes. I probably need a little bit more clarity on what is meant by that. Ultimately, if it's going to support developers with site development, if it's going to, help accelerate that process, if it's innovative and if it's going to solve a challenge, it would be eligible. But I think I would need to understand the context a little bit more. So I would welcome, for the attendee to get in contact afterwards, and we can have a more detailed discussion.
Perfect, thank you. Another question, does the funding cover software development for a technology solution? I guess similar to previously.
It's similar, I would say yes. I mean, if there's, it depends on the nature of the software and what the technology is. I would say it sounds like it would be in scope, but feel free to get in contact if you want to discuss a bit further.
Thank you. Okay, is there a limit to the number of partners that can apply as part of a consortium?
Thank you for the question, Rob. That's quite a good question. At the moment, we don't have a limit to the number of partners that can apply. I would, as a reminder, I guess I would make sure that you justify this, what the need is for each of these partners, what do they bring to the project, and what's the value add of these partners, what's the additionality of OWGP funding. I think as long as it's justified, that would be fine.
Okay, and the last one's actually quite a tricky question, and I don't know if Andy's looking at this as well, but an interesting one. So what is the definition of commercialisation? This is not supported by the fund, but I'm unsure of what that actually means or what we mean by that.
So I guess my very simplified definition when I'm saying, leading to commercialisation is bringing something to the marketplace. So as a result of the project, it's going to deliver something that's ready to be, supplied into the offshore wind market. I don't know if Andy wants to elaborate that anymore, but that's my definition. So it's, something that's going to be ready to be sold, ready to supply, packaged up and marketed.
I mean, I think that the simple definition from my perspective is it's ready to start generating revenue. So it's a product that's ready to go to market and has been fully tested and will start generating revenue through sales.
Yeah. And a final question, unless there are any more, and please, if you do have questions, do ask, because we do have time to answer. In the case of a successful grant, please confirm how the money is matched and paid, and potential timescales against that.
Yeah, okay. So that would depend on the size and duration of the project. So typically, we would, as part of the kind of kick-off and as part of the grant award, we would sit down and have a project plan. The OWGP would make grant payments to the company at regular intervals that are based on evidence of deliverables being achieved and evidence of expenditure. So it would depend on how many deliverables or milestones there are in the project, but say it's a 12-month project and there's 4 deliverables, every kind of quarter we would have a meeting, showcase a deliverable, then we would pay a grant for what's been achieved and what's been spent within that. So it's sort of in arrears of the work that's been done. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think so. There aren't any further questions, but there has been one question put in the chat, which was where will the presentation material be available afterwards? And I believe what we'll do is we'll upload a link to our website, and that will be underneath the opportunities tab under grant funding. And we will have this sort of access to the webinar, the recording of the webinar, as well as the slides from today.
Yeah, exactly. And if there, I don't know if the issue with the website's been resolved. If there are any issues getting access to that and getting any of the links to any of the documents, just drop me an email and I can send it to you directly. Any materials that you're not able to access. But, yeah, I don't know if there are any other questions. Happy to collate the questions that we've been asked and add that to the FAQs, and if anything else comes in, happy to circulate those as well.
I can't see any further questions.
No, still got 10 minutes, so did we cover all the questions? I'm just opening the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess if there's no further burning questions, I'm happy to leave it there. So thank you to everybody who took the time to join, participate, and ask questions. And as Lynn said, we will circulate all the information and the recording. And do get in touch with us directly. Any questions about the competition, about any of the business support programs or any further opportunities, yeah, do get in touch. And thanks to both Lynn and Randy, and to Vicky at the Catapult for helping to host. So yeah, thank you and have a good afternoon.
Bye everyone.
Bye.